Heyo everybody, Haku here with my first ever Kubera review, and because this is the first one, it's gonna be sort of a learning process as we figure out the sort of exact way I'm gonna do these, like the full-on template or whatever. But I'm planning to do these how I do the Tower of God reviews, and this one is going to be on episode 0, the prologue, and episodes 1 through 5, A Girl with a God's Name. So yeah, we're going to be doing 6 chapters here if you're counting the prologue. And yeah, I guess there's not really too much to talk about. I went through every chapter, I took in-depth notes, and I also did Omniscient Reader, so that's going to come right after this. And while I got like a good page and a half of notes on Omniscient Reader and thought it was really cool to go through the early chapters in detail, Kubera is like nuts. These first few chapters, I'm just like, there's so much information. There's just an insane amount of info that I don't think we're going to get to like anytime soon, especially knowing that this is over 500 chapters long. I'm like, well, I've seen the pacing so far. We've read up to like, what, 20 with the read-throughs? And I'm just like, there's so much. I've seen a little bit of what the pacing's like. There's so much that I'm like, we're going to have to keep coming back to these first few chapters like every like 100 200 chapters down the line. There's going to be new stuff revealed that it's like, oh, that's what that sort of meant or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of information, so this will probably be kind of long, but I'm just going to talk with you all about Kubera. Also, if you're worried about the read-throughs are going to still be coming as normal. I'm just also going to try to do a review on each section. If any sections in the future get super long, like 30 chapters or something, I might have to split it into like a part 1 or part 2, but we'll figure it out when we get there. I'll just talk with you all about what you think I should do about it, and then we'll figure something out when we get there. So with all of that out of the way, oh yeah, one last thing before we get into the prologue. I was trying to think anything else for the structure of this that I need to bring up. When it comes to the afterwards, I'm going to do them how I do the Tower of God blog posts for when I review that. When I review that, I go through all the information in the chapter, and then if there was anything important in the blog post, I put it at the end of the chapter section, and that's what I'm going to do here. If there was anything important in the afterward, I'm going to put it at the end of that chapter section. And also thank you to Ashu, who always comments like all of the afterward important information or whatever from them in the comments for each read through. I always read that, but for this I went through and read the afterwards myself. So anything that's just about like Kurigam's daily life or whatever is not going to be in here because that's not really important to the story. But anything important I'm going to bring up here. So yeah, let's start off with episode 0. Let's start off with the prologue. And the prologue is like, again, extremely important. I feel like this is something that we're just going to keep coming back to again and again and again. And what that means to me is a little bit that, I don't know, I guess it's sort of, you have to weigh it on a scale. On the one hand, it means that Kurigam really planned this stuff out. Like, if we're seeing stuff that I'm like, oh, this is probably going to take dozens of chapters to get an explanation for, or even hundreds to get an explanation for, it means that Kurigam really planned this story out. But on the other hand, I believe Kurigam's a woman, so I'm going to use she, her pronouns here, so correct me if I'm wrong. But it constricts her from changing direction in the story. We have all this stuff that's sort of set up and hinted at, and if later on down the line Kurigam's like, man, I wish I would have changed my mind and went a different direction with the story, it kind of like constricts a little bit of what you can change your mind on in the future. But yeah, I just take this as meaning the story's really planned out in advance. So the first words we get to see are loss and solitude, and we get who looks like Gandharva. So again, I'm assuming that just means losing their child, their family. That makes sense for Gandharva. Then we see force, opportunity, and promise with who I believe is Asha. So Asha, maybe the promise is, there was somebody in the brief glimpse of a flashback we saw, maybe the promise is with them. Force and opportunity is an interesting one. Like, she could, because Asha's really one of the only like human characters that we've really gotten here that's also like strong and cool and stuff, or at least as much as a human can be compared to like the Suras or Shuras and gods. Maybe Asha's got their own sort of grudge or anything against the Shuras and or the gods after what happened in her backstory. Maybe that's what the opportunity is referring to. We see enemy, revenge, and transcendency with Marina. It'll be interesting to learn more about what the enemy and revenge is about, unless that's directed at Marina, as in like Kubera Lee's or Lee's Highest, whichever you want to refer to her as like her enemy, the person she needs to get revenge on for the destruction of her village. But transcendency is like, oh, the transcendental skills that Shuras use, so like maybe referring to that. Next we get justice and responsibility with Brilith and somebody that I don't think we've met yet, or at least I think that's Brilith. So that's another thing that we're gonna have to take some time to learn. We get protection and love with Kubera, and again, somebody else we haven't met yet. And of course, I'm referring to all of this as like from where I am, my perspective. So again, you don't have to over-explain things or tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm right. These are just like my sort of breakdown as I'm going through. I obviously don't know what's happened 400 years into the future, so any wrong assumptions I make or wrong predictions I make are just wrong because I'm here only a couple chapters in. But we get, protection and love with Kubera and somebody else that I don't think we've met yet. And then lastly, we have somebody teaching math to somebody, and it's somebody with blue hair and someone with a silver braid. Don't know who they are yet either. So again, there's a lot of mystery that after seeing the first 20-ish chapters, I think, I have no idea about yet. So there's still stuff that is going to be important from this prologue way into the future. And then we end with Kubera and Asha and like being stuck between Sura and not just a god, but God crossed out and like Idioty Smith, the idiot. We see Agni. So it's not just between Shuras and gods, but between Shuras and that specific god, placing some importance on Agni in the story there. So that's where we end our prologue. Again, extremely important stuff that I feel like is going to be very, very important for a long time into the future. Then we get into episode 1. And let me know also in the future, do you want me to like, you know how you can do video chapters like across the bottom of the screen? Tell me if you want me to do chapter by chapter like video chapters within these reviews. I don't really think it's super necessary because like why are you going to just like jump to my chapter 2 review and not watch the chapter 1 section? But whatever. Just let me know if you want that. But let's talk about episode 1. So we're starting A Girl with a God's Name. So we have like I believe it's Kubera saying like this is familiar, but it's with an unfamiliar name. So again, I have some guesses, but I think I'll get to those towards the end of this chapter. We have the book This Is How I Survived, and it's written by the last survivor, Rowlees, and we have also like Fighters Union down there. And we've already seen in the story like the Magicians Unit or Union or something like that. So I guess maybe there's different classes, but we'll have to see. We'll have to get to that. Right now it seems like only magicians are important, but that could just be because we haven't been introduced to other things yet. So Rowlees, presumably Kubera Lee's father. We see the calendar says it's N1510, and we see that, it says N1510 on it. I guess that's the month. The month would be 10. So we're in the 10th month of year N15, and there is a discrepancy in this timeline that I want to bring up when we get to that. I don't think it's till towards the end of this section of chapters though. One thing, I didn't want to look up too much about how time works in Kubera because I know like time in the calendar and stuff is supposed to actually be important to things, and I didn't want to get spoiled on that before I'm introduced to it in the actual story, so I didn't look up anything about that. The only thing I do know is I believe that weeks are 12 days, months are 3 weeks, so 36 days in each month, which is what we saw on the calendar here, and then there's 12 months like how it is in real life. So that leaves us with 400 some days a year, I think, a bit over 400. So we see that the 10th of this month is Kubera's mom's birthday, and the 34th is Kubera's birthday. And yeah, like I said, the calendar goes up to 36, I have noted down. Kubera mentions that she feels stuffy and uncomfortable, and I'm like, that might be important too, because stuffy and uncomfortable, this is a familiar feeling, but with an unfamiliar name or whatever. It's like Kubera, and like Kubera mentions the thing, or I don't know if it's quite Kubera, or like where Kubera ends and the narrator begins, where Kurigan begins in this these early few panels. But there's also the mention of like it feels like you leveled up a character wrong and didn't find out until later. I don't know how much of that is just comedy and how much of that is important. Like, as if Kubera has like fake memories and she was like placed in this village for some reason. I don't know. I don't know how much of this is important yet, but I'm going to assume it's important until we figure out otherwise. We see the birthday gift that Kubera has. It's a letter that says that Kubera can choose a new name tomorrow and leave the village. So they can't leave the village with the name Kubera, which is a god's name. They have to pick their own name before they can leave. So again, why are you only allowed to be in this village with a god's name? Again, there's a lot of information here. There's clothes made by a wizard that Rowan got. And then we have specifically mentioned twice in the letter, it says, the one who loves you the most in the world, your mom. And then Kubera says, you're also the one I love the most in the world. So again, I'm just taking in anything that seems like it might be important. The mom tells Kubera to go get mushrooms, and this seems sketchy. This is something where only after going back and rereading, because like before when I was first reading and my reactions, I was like, something seems off here, something seems different. But now going back and rereading, it feels to me almost like, again, I'm on some big tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff. So like Kubera we saw before when, man. So it seems like people were trying to get her to leave the village, I think, because her mom tells her to go leave the village to get mushrooms. And then later on, when we get to Rowan says, oh, you'll have to go into the deep woods. You'll have to go farther out away than usual. So it almost seems as like if it was planned to get Kubera away before it was destroyed, and they might have known that it was coming beforehand. Plus, there's the fact that Kubera has all this like weird stuff going on surrounding her. So again, I feel like reincarnation of the god Kubera is like maybe too easy of a way to go to guess what Kubera's deal is. Maybe she's actually, maybe it's like a God, I hate Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but it's like an Assassin's Creed Odyssey thing where maybe Kubera's actual father is the god Kubera, but the fighter hero Rowley's raised her as sort of like, or at least was like a surrogate father. I don't know. Lots of guesses, lots of weird stuff going on here. Where was I at? Yeah, the mom tells her to go get mushrooms, and that seems sketchy, like she's trying to get her out of the village. Then we see Kaz. We finally get introduced to who Kaz is, even though he was mentioned before. Gets her a math book. The mom said to talk to Rowan, and Rowan tells Kubera that she'll only find the mushrooms in the deep woods. So again, the mom is like, okay, go get mushrooms and make sure you talk to Rowan, and Rowan says, go into the deep woods. So it's like they're sending her away. That's when we get our first mention that nobody could keep up with Kubera, maybe a half, but definitely not a quarter. Our first mention of halves and quarters, which I'm assuming are just half and quarter Shuras. I don't know if half and quarter gods exist or not. But again, our first mention that Kubera's physical abilities are abnormal. Then we have them say that they were worried that Rao only had a daughter, but Kubera could carry on the line of fighters. We have the other guard told to come to the party to nothing will and again, Rowan tells the other guard, I think their name was, I don't remember. I have it written down later on, so we'll get to it later on. Peel or something maybe? I don't remember. But yeah, so again, it's one of those things where did they know that this destruction, this calamity that Marino was bringing would happen? Because it seems like they're sending Kubera away, and Rowan tells the other guard, no need to guard, come on, let's just go to the party. So I am just on this tinfoil hat that the village, or at least certain members of the village, like the mom and Rowan, knew what was going to happen after rereading this. So we get all of that, and then at the very end of the chapter, we have our first glimpse of Asha in the background, and we end on Kubera finding Gantarva in the deep woods. And then in the afterword, the only thing that I thought was important from the afterword was Kurigam mentions new details from the best challenge version. So I'm assuming it's kind of like Tower of God in a way, where there was an original version submitted for like a competition, and then it got picked up to be actually published. I'm assuming that's the way that this worked. So the best challenge version was the version that was just written for the competition, and this is the actual published version. So there were new details added from that version, including Rowan. Rowan's a new detail for this. Then we get into episode 2. So episode 2, we get Kubera freaking out at the very beginning over the extremely rare disappearing curry mushrooms. Don't know how much the curry mushrooms are going to, like, how much that detail is actually going to be important or not. Gantarva tells her not to touch him, and cold comes from him, and she realizes that this is magic without a spell. And I guess that's, like, technically not magic, it's transcendental skill or whatever. But Gantarva specifically says, he's like, yeah, this isn't magic. Kubera assumes that he's a half, so she assumes from his appearance that he's a half-Shura, even though that is an incorrect assumption we learn later on. We get the first name drop for Shakuntala, and then he just pisses off Kubera, being like, oh wait, no, you're not Shakuntala, you suck, you're awful, and everybody just continually roasts Kubera. From there, the scene with her holding the tree is still funny to me. I went back and reread, and I thought the scene with her holding the tree angrily was, like, still really, really funny. But again, that shows more of her inhuman physical abilities. We see that the curry mushrooms are worth 5 gold coins. Again, I don't know how much knowing the actual economy of this world is going to help in the story, but I felt like it was maybe important to note it down just in case. Gantarva finds it funny to learn that humans can't eat these mushrooms whole, which I think is important. Like, it's kind of a comedy scene, haha, you humans can't eat it, but he says he finds it funny to learn that. But I think that's important in the story because it shows that there are things about humans that Gantarva doesn't know. So Gantarva, again, I don't want to get too spoilery for, I guess, anybody for some reason who's just following along with my reviews. We know that he's really, really important and has lived a really long time, without getting into too much details. So it's interesting to know that there are just basic things about how humans work that he doesn't know. I think that is an important fact to keep track of. From there, we have Kubera using the fake gibberish name, which turns into Kupaturgent. Gantarva tells her to go the opposite way of the village and says that its mercy is a king. So again, Gantarva obviously isn't on some grand plan, but he meets Kubera in there, probably, well, I guess he doesn't know that her name is Kubera at the time, though they do know about a girl with a god's name. But either way, she gets sent away even more by Gantarva. Then we get the cliffhanger. The cliffhangers are crazy in the series. The cliffhanger for this episode is the village getting deleted. The afterword for chapter 2, though, we have mention from Kurigam that Kubera hates people that are stronger than her, just in general. If somebody's stronger than her, she just hates them by default. Also mentions that the tone will often be lighthearted in this series, but then sometimes not. Then we move on to episode 3. Episode 3, we have Kubera blanking it out and then just rushing down the cliff on her own. Again, we have just her tapping into these physical abilities that are much more than normal humans. This is something that is again and again being shown to us as, yeah, this is important for her character. We then get to see the red sky. We get to see some flashbacks to build up some feels. Marina then, when she shows up, doesn't speak in response to her. I don't know if this is... I don't know if this is maybe because he doesn't speak to humans. This might be more of a character thing that we'll get into in the future, but I just thought it was important to know just in case it is a character, like a character aspect we get into the future, that he doesn't respond to her, he doesn't talk to her. But right after she shows up and everything, we have Asha coming in with the Hoti Vayu Hoti Chandra, which is a hiding spell, or at least Hoti Chandra is, so I'm assuming then that she just chained back-to-back spells, and that Hoti Vayu is the yoink teleportation, get her out of there, and the Hoti Chandra is the hiding spell. Asha says that magicians can't beat a Sura like Marina, even in groups, and we have the first mention of a Terra before we end the chapter. In the afterword for this one, Kurigam says that Kubera's village is famous for mushrooms, which is why, like, even people from the city come to collect mushrooms there, which is why there weren't that many. And we kind of all got that within the chapters themselves. We get a mention that spells can be used individually or combined, which is, I guess, what we saw here. Like, I don't know if it was a combination or if it was just like a back-to-back using one, then using the second. Because it doesn't necessarily seem like a combination, so to speak. Kurigam also says that she writes spells in English because she thinks it looks better to write them in English as compared to Korean. And that, I think, is all we get before we move on to Chapter 4. And wow, I have a lot of notes for 4 and 5. So yeah, that was the first page for all of 0 through 3, and then the second page is just 4 and 5. But yeah, let's talk about Chapter 4 for a bit. So first off, we have Asha's first big Kubera roast, just completely insulting everything about her. We get the explanation of Hoti Chandra. It distorts the 5 senses in an area for a time. So I guess that maybe it depends on how strong you are. The area can be larger or the time can be longer. But we just learned that it distorts the 5 senses in an area for a time. Also, it doesn't work on sixth senses. So we know that gods have 6 senses. So I guess just gods, I guess it doesn't work on. It worked on Marina, so I guess that just tells us that Shuras don't. That would make sense. So then we have Kubera telling Asha her real name, which garners a reaction. Then we have Hoti Brahma used by Asha, which is a restraining spell. Again, got to remember what all the different spells do. Then Asha says that she really wants to leave, but she's willing to use all of her magic if it means protecting Kubera, which means that, again, with Kubera having the special name and everything, Asha knows something here. I mean, I don't think Asha's in on some deep conspiracy like maybe the people from the village possibly were, but at the very least, Asha knows something about Kubera, and that something makes it so, like, even though she wants to leave, even though she doesn't want to fight, she's willing to do whatever it takes to protect Kubera. We get to see Hoti Vayu, a movement spell. We get an explanation of small Suras, which are adolescent Suras. They have an appetite, or they have a strong appetite, and they generally stay away from humans because of hunters. And then we get when we have the discussion here, we get 2 words highlighted, which are revenge and to survive. And revenge was paired with Marina in the prologue, so I think, again, all of this is important connecting together. You know the obvious themes, but I mean, we're not far enough in to really get into that kind of thing. We get a brief glimpse of Asha's past. It happened 10 years ago when she was 10 years old, which would have been a couple years after whatever the big cataclysm or the big thing that ended one age and moved into the next age was. So it happened a few years after that. We get a cliffhanger of the attack from Marina's true form. Oh yeah, we end on that cliffhanger too. All these cliffhangers. There's a lot of information in the afterword this time around. So first, Kurigan mentions that Marina's hair and clothing have changed from the, what is it, best challenge version, that his full form has changed a lot, and also that this transcendental skill is called Crimson Lightning. It's something that Marina uses often because it can be used relatively rapidly, whereas most of his other skills have a long sort of delay, a build-up time, I guess, which again makes sense. And also, Kurigam says that magic has to be said out loud, but not transcendental skills. And because of this, transcendental skills aren't, they're like names or whatever, aren't going to be written in the manhwa and the webtoon itself, because like the Shuras don't need to yell it out loud. So it won't be named there, but but Kurigam will name it in the afterward /blog. Then also Kurigam says that from the best challenge version, she decided to change Asha's age to make Asha a bit older, and says that Lise and Asha will always have a 4-year age gap. Now, Kurigam always refers to Kubera as Lise, I guess to distinguish Kubera the main character from Kubera the god. So because of that, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've been calling Kubera Kubera this entire time, but I don't know if I should also, since the author refers to her as Lise, I don't know if I should also just start saying Lise, just to make it easier to not be as confusing. And then that's when, again, I found out 12 days a week, 3 weeks a month, 12 months a year, but I didn't want to learn anything more about the time system because I didn't want to spoil myself before we get things revealed in the actual series. Now, is this where? Yeah. So, okay. This next chapter, episode 5, is where I'll get into what the time discrepancy kind of is. I don't know if it's a translation issue or what the deal is. There might be some sort of explanation, but I'll get to it here. So we're starting episode 5 with a flashback to Rowan Pale. That was the other guard's name. To Rowan Pale and the mom. This was a flashback, I believe. No, I can't tell if this is a Yeah, we start with the flashback, then later on it kind of blends into. Yeah, it kind of blends into. I don't know if this is a flashback or like a dream or like she's getting a message from the afterlife. It's kind of unclear. I feel like we'll find out a little bit later, but as for right now, it's a little bit unclear. But we see that Pale is the one who suggests to use both of the parents' last names. The parents, I think, are Rao Lise and Anna Hyas, and that's how we end up with Lise Hyas. So then we have this mention of Haas and Kaz, and the mom saying that you'll meet them later, which makes me think, so did these 3 die? And maybe these 3 knew more. Maybe these 3 were in on whatever was going down with the village to send her away. Did these 3 die, and that's why she's having the vision of them? Again, like message from the afterlife. But meet them later with Haas and Kaz. So maybe Haas and Kaz also survived somehow. But then she has to wake up to reality and to her new friend Asha. And I just think with this vision, there's a lot more going on here. So Lise wakes up and has an injured arm, which I wouldn't have thought was that important. I was like, yeah, she just injured her arm somehow. Maybe it's from Marina's attack. Maybe it's just scraping it on something when they get teleported. But specifically in the afterword, Kurigam says to watch out for whatever injured her arm. So I guess that's going to actually be an important thing. Wakes up with an injured arm. Asha already doesn't have a right arm, I don't think. She says that her right arm was already injured and it looked like it was crushed by a boulder, but she's like, nah, not really. So I guess she doesn't have one, I'm assuming. We haven't seen one, at least. Then we see Hotiagni, which is an explosive fire attack. It's hard to know if it's really explosive or if like just a fire spell can break apart rocks, because the way fire works in fiction is really, really weird. There is that. We see Hotiagni for the first time. and we reveal that they escaped the attack via teleportation magic. We have Ashirahiro, born in D996 and is 20 years old, and a magician. And Kubera Lees, born in N0 and is 16 years old. So it has to be N16 now, but on the calendar it said N15. So I'm wondering, what is the discrepancy? Well, it's N15, so maybe she's turning... Well, no, that wouldn't make sense. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Even if she was born in N0, you go N0 to 1, to 2, to 3, to 4, and then up to 15. So if it's N15 and it's her birthday, she'd be turning 15 unless she was born in... What was before N? What was before N? D? If she was born in D990... Yeah, this would only make sense if she was born in D999. Unless there's another... In Kubera, there's another number between 0 and 1. Because again, from N0 to N15, like, N15 is the 16th year, but if you're counting a person's age, then it would only be 15 years. Because you'd be going from 0 to 1. The only way she would be 16 is if she turned 1 in N0. Now, this could be an explanation, it could be a cultural thing, because, man, there's some culture, it might be Korean, I don't remember if it's Korean, but it's one Asian culture where, like, basically everybody shares a birthday. Like, it's like, oh, this year everybody turns 1, the next year everybody turns 2 on this day. And your age isn't determined by your actual birthday legally, but by what, like, where you were born in correspondence to this specific date. That might be Korean, but even then that doesn't make sense because they were having a birthday party for her, which means it would be her own individual birthday. So there's something, like, either the year should be N16 or Kubera should have said I was born in D999, or there's an extra number in the Kubera numerology somehow. But yeah, there's a discrepancy there. There's like an actual, like, Ashirahiro makes sense, right? Unless I'm getting this wrong. Like, Asha being 20, it'd be D999 or D996 to 97, 98, 99, and then to N0. Yeah, right? And then add 15 on top of that would be 19. So maybe there is a D1000 and then an N0, but that would mean that Kubera would have had to have been born in D1000, not N0. So yeah, there's something wrong with this chronology. I don't know if it's a translation thing or what, but there's something wrong with this this whole system. So we have a transition from there, like, sort of nice moment, a really, really nice transition to the sky turning red and then back to where Marina and Gandharva are. That's, like, really good. So Gandharva mentions the human with a god's name, which makes me think, okay, so they knew then about a human with a god's name then. They might not know it was Kubera, but they know that somebody like that existed. Marina speaks using telepathy, which is something that we see from Shura's moving forward a few times, and suggests going back to their stronghold, so they have a stronghold. Says that they can't attack Atera because it's stronger than the city with 2 temples. I don't know if that's supposed to be specific, as in there is one city that has 2 temples, and Atera is stronger than that city, or if it's just saying Atera only has 1 temple, but if a city does have 2 temples, Atera is still stronger. I don't know if that's, like, specifically referencing a city, like a specific city, or if it's just kind of a weird translation of general speech. Then they say that the god of fire has been summoned there, and that he's a troublemaker neglected by the world of gods, and Gandharva knows his weakness. And that's where we end on our last cliffhanger for this section of chapters. For the afterword of this, Kurigam says that Lise is not pretty, even in the afterword. Kubera's just catching strays. Kubera just can't catch a break. Just getting roasted, even by the author, even in the afterword. Says that Lise is not pretty, but has extraordinary intelligence in unexpected situations, so just randomly will be smart, I guess. We get to reveal that there are 8 clans of Suras, and that they're like demons, but not really, and that 6 of the clans are completely carnivorous, so that's a way that humans can test to see if somebody is a Shura in disguise, is to try to get them to eat vegetables, because 6 of them are completely carnivorous. We get full names revealed. Anahayas is the mother, Rowan Renaud or Renaude, and Pale Syro for Syrophe. Yeah, then I mentioned this earlier when Kurigam said to look forward to the thing that was used to cause the wound, or that caused the wound on Lisa's arm. I wouldn't have really thought that that was an important detail until it was mentioned like this, and I'm like, okay, I guess that's an important detail. Maybe Lise can only really be hurt by Shuras, and it was because of Marna's attack. Maybe, I don't know. That's maybe my best guess right now, but I don't know. And then we get the mention that the names, the inspiration for the names are from Hindu mythology, which is something that you could put together pretty quickly. So yeah, that's it for the first section. I really, really, really enjoyed reading it. I can't wait to do the next read through video. But like I said, I feel like it was really good to go back, reread these, take detailed notes on them, because I feel like so much in these first chapters is going to be so important. Like, there's just so much information stuffed into these chapters that I think we're going to have to continue to come back to for a long time in the future. But yeah, that's it. Like I said, my next video will probably be another read-through. I'm probably going to do the next 2 read-throughs before I do another review. But like I said, I'm going to try to do a review for each section. Read-throughs will be up as normal. So yeah, just I guess expect reviews whenever. But either way, that is it. Now that we've gone through all of these, also this is generally kind of going to be the setup for these reviews. I'm just gonna take these chapters, I'm gonna go through as in-depth as possible, and then I'm just gonna talk to you all about them. That's generally the way I think I'm gonna do these, because that's the way I've always done Tower of God. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. This was really, really, really fun to do. I guess like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you thought about these chapters. Again, you don't need to over-explain things. We're going to go through as we go through. Yeah, like, comment, subscribe for more Kubera, much, much more on the channel. Like I said, right after this, I'm going to be doing the Omniscient Reader review. And then, I don't know, I guess right after that, we're going to be doing the next read-through for Kubera and for Omniscient Reader. Follow on Twitter if you want. If you want a link to the Discord server, just ask and I can give you a link. Free and open for anyone. If you want to help support the channel on Patreon, it's patreon.com/Haku of the Tubes, or a link will be in the description. Or if you'd like to become a channel member, you can just hit join down below the video. Thank you to people who are already patrons and channel members. Thank you to the chosen regulars, Etchy Zero, Evan Holly, and Remorsefuls. Thank you to Magical Girl FR Nono. Thank you to Cherryton Students, also the Storyteller, and David Langstaff. And thank you to Slayer Candidate SG. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.